I know you've been outspoken about defending victims of sexual assault. Do the past allegations against Jim Jordan that he turned a blind eye to sexual abuse give you any reservations?
I'm not familiar or aware with that. He's not indicted on anything that I'm aware of, and so I don't know anything and can't speak to that. But I will say that I have been, as you said, Margaret, I don't know anything, and I don't know anything about that. What I do know is that I've been a very strong voice for women. I've talked to Jim Jordan and Steve Scalise about that. I've been a very strong advocate for rape victims. As you mentioned earlier, the Judiciary Committee, with him as chairman, recently passed a rape kit bill that Barbara Lee and I are working on. And those are the facts and the data that I have to work with, and I've had a very positive experience with him in that regard.
Nancy Mace wants nothing to do with this conversation about Jim Jordan.
She's like, la 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 la. Don't hear you. Sorry, la la la. Not hearing you.
Hadn't heard about it.
This is the most insane argument that she's like, well, I've talked to the guy and he never tried to rape me, so he seems cool.
And she's played that mid-range role before, because she had those stances where women could still have access to abortion services and things like that. She was on that route. And then that's one of those moments where people said, oh, Nancy Mace, maybe she's not absolutely 100% completely insane. But when it comes to things like this, she has to stick with her folks, her conference, I guess, who it is that can continue to get her in office. Because Helen is the same woman who, after she was one of the 8 who voted against McCarthy, and now they're coming for her. And now she's asking for money because they're coming for me. They're coming after me because I'm living by my principles, which seems pretty admirable. But you're still standing behind someone that you apparently have never heard the story about. But I guarantee if a Democrat had these stories, which some of them do, you've heard all about it and you want to talk about it. But principles are limited here and there at times.
It's like selective information. Like if it was a Democrat, she would have been like reading every line by line detail. But because it's Jim Jordan, she's like, I don't know, I've never heard of this story. I just.
Which I think might lead us to who she may be supporting versus between these two, Scalise and Jordan. But again, she needs the money. So maybe she's on the fence as well too. These are some of the tough decisions that need to be made because of money and politics. A little bit more, because again, the details of what is that went down with Jim Jordan, or alleged to have gone down with Jim Jordan in his past. In case you guys didn't know, this is in 2018. There was a news report that came out that while Jordan was at Ohio State as an assistant wrestling coach from 1987 to 1995, he ignored alleged sexual misconduct by Richard Strauss, who was an athletic director whose behavior is under investigation by the school. Think Larry Nassar. But maybe not to that same degree, who was at Michigan State and also worked with, I think, the national women's team, and who was, the big story on him after he was busted for, let's keep it real, assaulting and raping these girls and young women that he was supposed to be taking care of because he was an athletic trainer. He was the doctor there. In this case, there was a guy, Richard Strauss, who was accused of doing a lot of things with these male wrestlers, and many of them were uncomfortable with it. And Jim Jordan denied knowing anything about it, other than just turning that blind eye, which they said everyone must have known about. Actually, here's that quote. Jordan definitely knew that these things were happening. Yes, most definitely, is what David Range said about it, and as he was there. It was there. He knew about it because it was an everyday occurrence. We talked about it all the time in the locker room. Everybody joked about it and talked about it all the time. That line is what I would assume they were gonna jump on. Oh, we were just joking about it. If evidence comes out, or if it's pretty damning, the things that they're alleging that Jim Jordan ignored and turned a blind eye to, if it starts popping out, they'll see lines like that and say, it was a joke. Everyone was joking. Towel snappy in the locker room is just a normal occurrence amongst us boys at Ohio State's wrestling team.
Yeah, but it depends on the details, right? Like what kind of stuff was this doctor doing? Like I'm sure the doctor was doing a little bit more than towel slapping. So if it's more than towel slapping, it's like, maybe not so funny. Yeah. But also I have to say, this is one of the things that, Trump is endorsing Jim Jordan for the speakership. And that's one of his big things is like, Jordan's a great guy. He was a wrestling coach. Like that's his big endorsement. Like he's like, did you know he was a wrestling coach? The guy is qualified. Come on.
He knows how to run a team. He was an assistant wrestling coach. Last thing, because this is the most, not most, but this is actually, I think, a pretty humorous part about this whole thing. There is a surprise third candidate running, potentially, who would be willing to take the seat. Maybe you guys have heard of him. His name is Kevin McCarthy. He says he's ready to do it again. Let's look at this tweet or X from Mike Lawler. Because in the wake of all of these things that are going on, now they're wondering, we have this opening as speakership. And they said removing Speaker McCarthy from office midterm was idiotic. Doing so as Israel faces an all-out attack is dangerous. Uncertainty and chaos in the US breeds vulnerability around the world. The House should immediately reinstate McCarthy and stop screwing around. He's already gone. I mean, if we're looking just reinstate anyone, just reinstate anyone. Why not a Democrat? Since we have this turmoil going on across the world and we need someone in that speakership position, we'll get there sooner than later. A little bit more though, because McCarthy said on Monday that he is willing to resume serving as speaker if enough of the Republicans who voted in favor of his ouster last week are open to his reinstatement. Because at that, I think 45-minute post-oust speech he gave, or press conference he gave, he said, I'm not running again. We'll let them handle it. And he was done. He was a little bit disgusted that day. So this is what he did say now. Whatever the conference wants, I'll do, he said during an interview on Hugh Hewitt's syndicated radio program when asked about this possible return. He echoed that sentiment hours later at a news conference, largely focused on the Israel-Hamas war, deflecting direct questions about whether he thinks the situation abroad makes him best suited to lead House Republicans, which is probably smart for him to not take such a horrific situation as what's going on in that war and say, you know what the world needs? They need Kevin McCarthy. Yeah. Finally, something smart that he didn't say.
What was that, 2 days difference? He was like, you know what? I'm done with you guys. You guys fired me. I'm done with you guys. And then 2 days later, he's like, you know what? I'm actually, yeah, I can do it again. Yeah.
You can't fire me because I quit. And then you call back like, listen, man, I'm sorry. It was a Tuesday and I was really upset.
For more political news breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.